Shame and stigma is big. Racism is big. However, I think the shame and stigma from my side is not so much related to the racism. It's related to the messages that what we've internalized. So I think we're coming from a community that has generations and generations, intergenerational trauma, as it's called actually, in some communities and in our communities. Because coming back from way back, right, from slavery, we've internalized a lot of those experiences and we still live it out. And depending on our conditioning and, our socialization, depending on, our spiritual practices, depending on what we, messages we've gotten from church, from religion, this whole good, bad, that's where it comes from. So, I think racism has a part to play in how we live our lives and the pain that we carry. But in terms of stigma and shame in relation to trauma, I think a lot of it is the messages that we've internalized about good and bad.
When my boy Drew died, the people in the media and stuff tried to put it on like he was a gangbanger or whatever. He was a Crip because he loved his blue, But that was the only thing, so it's like they tried to use that against his case, or like for his mom, the police and the courts, whatever. They try to make it look like he was like a gangbanger and a bad guy. Like he was like nothing compared to that. Yeah, he wore his blue, he repped his blue flag, but Drew, he was a sweet person, a kind-hearted guy. He wouldn't like let anyone like disrespect a girl, a woman in his presence. He was very like loving and stuff. So they try to make it like he was a drug dealer and all this stuff and da 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 da.
It shouldn't really matter what color you are, because it's all the same, inside. So it shouldn't matter, but sometimes it is.
But I see it in the news of all the guys that are getting killed these days. It's like mostly gang related. So when a young male passes away, gets shot, killed, whatever, and he's black, they're gonna first think he was into selling drugs or in a gang or whatever, Because these days that's all they're seeing is black men just dying over whatever, stabbing each other over whatever, you know what I'm saying? So it's like people are very quick to say that and judge them, saying, oh yeah, he was this, he was involved in this, he was involved in this, that's why he got shot, whatever. Sometimes that's not even the case. The person that could be like shot could be getting his education in college or whatever, be a young black male dressed nice, like whatever, but he could get killed and they could think that he's a drug dealer or whatever, but it's like people only just use what they hear and what they see, off BT, whatever, saying they see all these guys, drug dealers, whatever, if they see all the bling bling, whatever, so they think they're into selling drugs or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But not everybody's like that down here. Not everyone is like that. People have dreams and goals just like everybody else in the world,
The first thing I heard was when my son was murdered, is that, he must have been involved in a gang, or he must have been doing drugs, or he just came up here and he got himself all mixed up. And hearing that, I had to actually come to the forefront and protect my son and his character, because now he cannot help him. He can't say anything for himself. So I had to come to the forefront and clear his character in that department and to make sure I get it right. But I still struggle with that, because whenever I say to anyone about I lost my son, he was murdered, I get this sort of, okay, how was he murdered? Was he mixed up in something? And I always have to keep protecting that. I was even faced one day asking, when I told someone about my story about how my son was murdered, I was asked what was his street name. And I thought, street name? What do you, so right there, that was a stigma for me and my son, because right away they're saying that he belongs to a gang, so he has a street name, And that was hard for me to deal with. And I still feel that way right now. I feel a lot uncomfortable, even though that's one of the ways that helped me with my grieving is talking about my son and how I lost him and everything and how his losing him affected me. But I also have to protect his character up to this day. Every time I talk about my son, which I love to, there's always this negative question that comes behind. Was he in a gang? Or was he in drugs? Or was he mixed up in anything? As a young black man, and like I said, he was 22 years old. So the minute I started to talk about my son, somebody would ask that question. And then I have to always repeatedly find myself defending his character at that time. And I am very uncomfortable with that up to this present time, because it still happens to me. And I struggle along that. Sometimes I want to talk about him, and I have to kind of choose the group I want to tell about my son and how he was murdered.
Well, I just find it's so hard as a black person getting information about resources out there that can help you. And once you've given the resources and you get there, the stigma that's attached to it, you know, it's something that I didn't really like, because as a black person, first it says you're black, you're single. Nobody ever think, okay, well, how is she single? They'll say, oh, do you have kids? Yes. The first thing they think that you didn't have a husband. When it says I've lost my husband, they go, oh yeah, you've lost your husband. It was like a shock. Mm-hmm. So it's just that stigma that goes along in being a black single woman. And I just think society needs to change that.
When I found out that my son was murdered, and before I was even able to identify my child, the media had him on television. He was out there, his face was... If I didn't even know and didn't get the call about him getting shot and died, I might have seen him on TV and I could have gotten a heart attack and dropped down, because no one contacted me like then to do this. But before that happened, they didn't talk to me to find out who Redden really was or anything. They just went out there and gave their story about him being here in Canada for 6 months or 7 months, which wasn't true, you know. And then they said he was here on vacation. That also wasn't true. And these are the things that would affect his character down the road, because anybody knowing a 22-year-old being in Canada on vacation for 6 or 7 months, right there, you know, really? They might want to say, oh yeah, was he really here on vacation? Mm-hmm. You know, and he wasn't.